Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, Dynasty League, PPR League, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is good, everybody? This is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Austin. I am your host. Always excited to be here. Brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Going live at 7 p.m. Mountain Time every single day. See somebody in the chat. What's up, Valdez? How we doing? Guys, thank you for all the support and the love everybody has been showing. I really do appreciate it. If you guys want to check out the Patreon, I do 2 extra segments every single day. Just more fantasy football coverage for you guys, as I've said before. Also, if you guys want to drop a tip, you can do that right there at streamelements.com/GSMCsportsnetwork. All of that is appreciated. Guys, we're going to be going over my winners and losers today. Obviously, we got a pretty sweet Monday Night Football matchup, so I don't mind if you guys have that on in the background. You can definitely do that. But we're going to be talking about running back winners, running back losers, and then we're going to go into my wide receiver winners and my wide receiver losers for the week. Had a ton of stuff to break down, a lot of good performances, a lot of bad performances from a fantasy perspective. So let's just go ahead and get into it with my running backs, and y'all see who we're talking about first here. And we're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. He finally had a good day. I know everybody is happy about that. 12th pick in the draft, Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. Really solid player. Like him, like what we had been seeing from him before, but now we finally got that full workload because David Montgomery is sitting out. He played a ton of snaps and got 20 touches. We always like to see the guys that are getting 20 touches, we always want those dudes in the lineup. 11 carries for 68 yards in his first NFL touchdown. It was like a 25, 30-yard run. Definitely looked good. And then on the receiving side of things, he got 10 targets and 9 catches for 58 yards. So that's definitely going to be very good from a PPR perspective. Really efficient game from him. It's kind of weird, and the numbers might be skewed with Jahmyr Gibbs here in this game just because they were down so much at the start of the game. They literally started off like 28-0 in the second quarter. So I don't know if I want to call it meaningless, but we definitely saw what he can do. Very, very fast guy. But at the end of the day, Jahmyr Gibbs is just not a very strong running back. He's not someone that's going to be breaking tackles. So I do expect a regression back to what we've been seeing. There's probably like 8 to 12 points per game, maybe like 15 if he's getting in the end zone more than he has, which obviously David Montgomery, I think, is leading the league in rushing touchdowns so far this year. They're going to be playing the Las Vegas Raiders next week, and I think that's a pretty decent matchup, especially if David Montgomery is not going to play. We didn't see much from Craig Reynolds, the other backup. He really wasn't doing too much in the game. I think he had like 3 fantasy points total, and Jahmyr Gibbs with the 27.6 fantasy points, very good day. if they can just continue to get this guy in space, I think he'll continue to succeed and, be solid. But really like Jahmyr Gibbs. Let's go to my next guy. Jonathan Taylor, man. Jonathan Taylor is back. He is actually back in the flesh. This week he did get more work than Mr. Zach Moss. So that's a beautiful sign. That was the sign that we were looking for. We kind of knew that was going to be happening just with him finally getting that contract. I think it was 3 years, $42 million or something like that. And we're just very, very happy that now he's taking over the backfield. At the moment, it seems. Obviously, they got Gardner Minshew, so they're down a little bit at quarterback. So we're hoping that Jonathan Taylor can come in and pick up the slack that Gardner Minshew may be leaving. But Gardner didn't look too bad this game. He did well. Maybe we'll talk about him in our quarterback winners because he put up like 22, 23 fantasy points. And the Colts are wearing some crazy new jerseys. I definitely like their new jerseys, their helmets. But let's talk Jonathan Taylor. Had a really good day with the 21 touches. So, 20 plus is always great. We're always expecting those guys to be doing big things. He had 18 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Also, he's, always going to be a factor in the receiving game. 3 receptions for 45 yards. Gardner Minshew's not the most talented quarterback, as I kind of said, so he's going to be dumping it down to Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss a lot. Definitely expect Zach Moss to still be involved in this offense. I want to see the exact number of touches that he had just for reference. Zach Moss still sitting at running back 5, so definitely good. Here against Cleveland, he had 19 total touches. 19 total touches for Zach Moss. Actually surprising. Combined, Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor combined for 36 total rushes. So that's definitely a lot. Run-heavy squad, I guess. And I can't remember who they played against Cleveland. It's kind of surprising. Cleveland's defense is really good. I'm surprised they were able to run that many times. But Minshew looked good. They did come out with a win here, I believe, right? I think that the Colts were able to win this one. And Jonathan Taylor definitely looked good. I went back and watched his game recap. There's this one YouTube channel that just is the best. They post all the game recaps for players that had good fantasy days. So definitely, I'll try to get their name so you guys can check them out. And yeah, love Jonathan Taylor for sure. Let's go Saquon Barkley. This dude is the only good thing that is happening for the New York Giants. Daniel Jones suffering with a neck injury, and they're going to Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor, in my opinion, looked much better than Daniel Jones, just from the eye test and what I'm seeing. But obviously, that was talked about in the media, and they were saying that no matter what, Daniel Jones is going to be the starter if he's healthy. They really do believe in this guy. But let's talk about Saquon. Saquon, 24 touches. We love it. We just absolutely love 20 plus. And then if your guy's going to like 25, like Josh Jacobs a lot of the time last year was getting like 30 touches a game, that's what we're looking for. Very high volume dudes, and Saquon fits under that category. 21 rushes, 77 yards. Also added in 3 receptions, 41 yards, and a touchdown. He was really doing it all here for the New York Giants. Somehow they come out with a win. I thought the Giants, had a possibility of not winning any more games this year, and Saquon said no to that. Only a 14-7 win, so definitely not impressive as it pertains to offense. But I'd like to see it. It's not that bad for you to get a win by any means necessary in the NFL, guys. That is the deal. But Saquon, very good day. Still like him. He's going to be a winner here in Week 7. Then we got James Cook. James Cook's looking explosive. He had that really bad game versus the Jacksonville Jaguars in London, and he definitely struggled in that one. I think he finished with like -4 rushing yards or something like that. I'm getting this fantasy thing up here, though. He's running back 14, averaging like 13 fantasy points per game so far, and a lot of what we like about him is just the PPR addition that he has. And this week, 3 receptions, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Also added in 13 carries for 56 yards. So 16 total touches. Anywhere between that 15 to 20 is what we need from our running backs. Running backs that are getting less than 15 touches, it's almost not worth having them on your squad. So I'm liking that, even with the addition of like Latavius Murray getting touches in this Bills offense, and then I think Damian Harris is still somewhere in Buffalo too. James Cook is obviously going to be the number one. I think he'll continue to be a fantasy performer. Definitely a winner here in week 7. Then finally, for my running backs here, let's talk about Isaiah Pacheco. This dude's just solid, man. One of the hardest workers in the NFL, one of the hardest runners in the NFL too, sitting at running back 8 in fantasy right now. Went this week more in the receiving game rather than the rushing game, which is unusual for him, but we'll still take it. 13 carries for 32 yards, getting a little bit locked up by that Chargers defense that really does have talented personnel. They just can't find a way to stop the pass in any way. And Pacheco was part of this receiving game here. 4 receptions, 28 yards, and a touchdown. Pat was really just cooking up in this game. I think he had like 300 yards going into halftime or something like that. He was on one, and pretty much everybody ate in that Chiefs offense here. But gonna put Isaiah Pacheco as one of my winners for week 7 too. Guys, when I come back, let's talk about running back losers. Definitely got some surprising names over on running back losers. All right, cool, guys. We're back. GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Austin. Thank you guys for being here. Let's talk running back losers in week 7. And we're going to just naturally start with the guy who's pretty much been a loser the entire time this year, and Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs currently somehow sitting at running back 10 despite his somewhat unimpressive performances that he's put up thus far. This week, 11 carries for 35 yards, 1 reception for 6 yards. So definitely nothing nice here for Josh Jacobs. He put up 6.1 total fantasy points. This was a weird game. The Bears were already starting a backup quarterback, and then Jimmy Garoppolo is ruled out, so the Raiders go and start their own backup quarterback. And Brian Hoyer has been a quarterback in the NFL for so long. He's played so many NFL games, and it just didn't look like he was up to speed. He immediately threw a pick in this game. He kind of messed up the entire game plan for the Raiders, and Josh Jacobs was really not much help either. They were doing a lot of passing. I want to get the passing numbers up for Hoyer. They ended up benching Brian Hoyer too in favor of Aiden O'Connell, who actually led them down to their only touchdown in the entire game. But Brian Hoyer threw the ball 32 times and only had 129 yards. So that's definitely not good. He had 1 fantasy point as a starting quarterback. And I really do think that was a reason that Devontae Adams was terrible this week. Obviously, Josh Jacobs was not that good. Jacoby Myers put up the only kind of impressive fantasy performance because he scored a touchdown late. But Josh Jacobs definitely going to get classified as a loser. We'll see what's happening. He plays Detroit next week, and I don't love the matchup, especially if Jimmy's not there. It seems like he's the only one that can pilot this offense at all. Next guy is definitely Brian Robinson Jr. He was one of my people that I gave you guys on my best bets and told you to bet on, so I'm really sorry and apologetic for that. I thought that, watching the Giants defense, last week they were going up against the Bills, and Bills not really known for having any type of solid, offensive line. Obviously, they're not the worst in the league, but James Cook was just all over them, and I really thought this was going to be a good spot for a big back. Brian Robinson Jr. is showing signs of if I gave him a comparison, it'd probably be like Derrick Henry. pretty solid back in my opinion, but he didn't get the attempts that we were looking for that he has been getting so far this year. Only 8 carries for 23 yards and then ended up in the end zone. So, and even him getting in the end zone doesn't even save his fantasy day. He had 8.3 fantasy points, and definitely classifying him as a loser because I just thought he was primed to have a huge game here. New York Giants rush defense is terrible. Not really good, but guys like Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence were really showing up on their defense and stopping Brian Robinson up. Sam Howell had to throw it a lot, and it only ended up with them scoring 7 points total, the Commanders. And then after that, part owner Magic Johnson was like, yeah, guys, like, what are we doing? It's really hard to win an NFL game scoring 7 total points. Like, it's not going to get it done. Got to classify Brian Robinson as a loser. Let's talk Raheem Mostert, who I thought could have a decent game this week. Very solid running back, still a top 5 running back, if I'm correct. Sitting at running back 2 still in ESPN fantasy leagues with only putting up 6 fantasy points in week 7. He was just getting stopped up early. They couldn't find a way to establish the run, and it just really seemed like Philadelphia's defense was locked in. Hassan Reddick was making a lot of plays. Guys like Jordan Davis, and they have a bunch of dudes on their defensive line that are impressive. And they're just, getting the Dolphins offense and Tua really out of their own rhythm. Raheem Mostert was really not part of the game until the second half. Ended up with 9 carries for 45 yards. Also had 1 reception for 6 yards. 6 fantasy points, just a dud from him. We'll really see what happens when A-Chain comes back. I really do think he's the more talented of the two. We really didn't see Jeff Wilson either in that game, which was surprising, being that he's spent so much time away from football, and now he has the chance to come back, and he really didn't make an impact in the game at all. The guys who really looked good were Tyreek and Waddle on the offense. Got to classify Raheem Mostert as a loser for being the running back 2 and only putting up 6 fantasy points. Definitely not good. Austin Eckler, also another loser for this week. This was his first week back, right? First week back? Maybe second? Yeah, second week back since his ankle injury. I think he had like a high ankle sprain that he sustained, and then so far he just has not been great since being back against Dallas. 10 fantasy points total. Got all the touches that he needs. Got 18 touches in that game, only like 50 scrimmage yards. Then week 7, only 5.6 fantasy points, 45 yards on the ground, and then surprisingly only 1 reception for 1 yard. He's usually much more involved in the receiving game, so we're surprised to see that. I think we are just going to keep this one out for Austin Eckler. He's been, over the past couple of years, one of the best fantasy players that you could possibly have. And, if some people are now thinking he's, not as good and like his value has somehow dropped, I would absolutely be targeting Austin Eckler to trade. I think the trade deadline is like week 9, week 10 or something like that. So you don't really have much time to do these trades. If you want to get a blockbuster done, maybe target Austin Eckler. He's looking like he has a couple of good matchups coming up here. Bears week 8. He's got the Lions here in week 10. Gets to play the Denver Broncos in week 14. That's going to be a day where he should absolutely eat. Usually that Chargers offense goes crazy against them. But, yeah, definitely a loser this week. Still love Austin Eckler's upside. He's one of the best fantasy players that you could possibly have. And then this guy, man. I'm always so high on this guy, specifically Bijan Robinson. And he didn't even touch the field. He had what was it? Because I saw him on the field multiple times, but he just really wasn't making an impact. He had 1 carry for 3 yards. I just hate that, people are starting him in the starting lineup of their fantasy squads, and he's just not going to – there's no news about him not playing, and there was no news about him not being a participant. He does just enough to – you should just be able to switch guys in that type of scenario. I hate that he only gets 1 carry when he has obviously been a huge part of the offense. But this whole time, Tyler Algier has been, ruining Bijan Robinson's fantasy performances. Truthfully, that's really what's been happening. And now Cordell Patterson is in there. He's going to start. eating some carries and getting some playing time. So we don't really know what the future holds here for Bijan Robinson. I was very high on him, especially after those first 2 weeks. We saw his potential and his burst and all his juke moves. He's really like that for sure. And it just seems like his coach doesn't really think that, or someone has to ask Arthur Smith what's going on with Bijan Robinson, because I don't get why, this guy's not getting 20 touches per game. He never gets there. He never ever gets there, except for one time this year he's gotten 20 plus touches. He's one of the best receiving backs already. He's absolutely one of the best receiving backs already. He's so impressive out of the backfield and, has hands for days. Really sad to see. But yeah, I guess he was sick was the deal. He was sick. So that was the problem. But rest in peace, Arthur Smith. They need a new coach. I'll throw my name in the bucket. Guys, when I come back, let's talk wide receiver winners, get back on some positivity, those type of vibes, and then after we're going to get back into the negativity with the wide receiver losers. Was that another Christian McCaffrey touchdown?
That is 16.
Wow.
Right there. That's pretty good.
Wow. What's good, everybody? Oh, one second, guys. All right, the coast is clear, I think. Coast is clear. How are you guys doing? Thank you guys for being here all the time. I think on the Patreon, you guys can always watch the Patreon live for free. Usually, it's very spotty when I do it. It's just after this show. And I like to do like game recaps, especially on Monday night and Thursday night for the Patreon. So if you guys want to go check that out, the link is in the description of this video. But guys, let's talk some wide receiver winners. I guess I'd never put the other one up, but we're talking wide receiver winners, and we're going to start off with, we had a crazy Sunday night football game. That was a very good Sunday night football game. Definitely enjoyed watching it. Had, the sweats going and missed all my parlays. So that was just rest in peace to me. We're back at it today, though. Don't quit. A.J. Brown went crazy. Tyreek Hill went crazy. Let's start with A.J. Brown, though. Both those guys are obviously very elite players, probably both are top 3 receivers in fantasy football, and A.J. Brown is actually ranked as the 3rd best wide receiver in fantasy football right now. He's been going absolutely crazy. He's on a tear right now. In week 1, he did a lot of good things, 7 receptions for 79 yards. We thought it was a good start. Then week 2, 4 receptions for 29 yards. He immediately goes to Jalen Hurts and is like, yo, give me the ball. And he was like in the media talking about, I need the ball. I'm open, blah, blah, blah. Anytime that you see that, I feel like it's a good sign to watch for that player to have a big game. Like they're in the media crying, saying that they need the ball. This also happened to Jamar Chase recently. A.J. Brown did this, and ever since he did, 131 yards week 3, 175 week 4, 127 week 5, 131 week 6, then 137 in week 7. So, performance-wise and just like being the most dominant player, A.J. Brown might be in that category. He had 15 targets this game. Also caught a touchdown. Should have had another one, but was inches away from scoring, so that would have made his fantasy day even better. But 29 fantasy points, definitely going to get it done. Very elite wide receiver over there. Too strong, too fast. If you remember, he was, DK Metcalf's Ole Miss partner, and they were both just into lifting a lot. And you could tell A.J. Brown is a big body. Then we got Tyreek. Tyreek is just different, man. There's something different about Tyreek. He's too quick. He runs routes extremely well and has amazing hands. Usually we did see him drop a couple balls here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him go for that 2,000-yard season that he told us he was going to do. Currently sitting at 4, 5, 6, 7 touchdowns through 7 games. Literally the touchdown that he caught this game, he had 2 dudes on him. He just splits them. Is faster than everybody. He just catches the touchdown. It's just too easy for this guy. 11 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. 25 fantasy points. He also got 15 targets. Both A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill got 15 targets in this game. And the weak spots of both of these defenses is usually their coverage. So, we all should have known that this was going to be happening. But dominant performances from those guys for sure. Yeah, this is Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa, if you didn't know. Then we got Puka. Puka is the most, surprising guy that we've seen in fantasy football so far this year. He is solid, very good wide receiver, just as it pertains to route running, and he has size and speed. He's not like someone that jumps off the page, honestly. Like when you're looking at these rookie wide receivers that came out, I feel like a guy like Quentin Johnston for the Chargers just sticks out way more than Puka Nacua, even Jordan Addison. And, technically this guy might be the best rookie wide receiver to come out of this class. He might win Rookie of the Year. Definitely putting up, at least talks about it. This week, 8 receptions for 154 yards on 12 targets. He completely outshined Cooper Kupp in this game too. They just couldn't find a way to get Cooper Kupp open, and Puka Nacua stepped up to the plate and, accepted that challenge and really put the team on his back here. 24.4 fantasy points in this game. I really like this rookie. If you were so lucky as to lose in week 1, in most leagues, this guy wasn't picked up at all. And grab him, you are a very happy fantasy manager. I was unfortunately not that type of lucky. Then, guys, I want to talk about the Chiefs pass catchers, because as we're talking about these guys have to, be involved. They have to find ways to be good. Like Patrick Mahomes is always going to be throwing for 300+ yards. That's not really a thing that we have to worry about. He consistently does that, at least like 270. His line on FanDuel constantly sits at like 275, 280 passing yards. So the guys that we're looking at here on the screen are Rashee Rice and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I think both of these guys have immense talent. Rashee Rice has been showing that a lot more so far this year. Valdes-Scantling has kind of been lagging behind, but we finally saw him have a decent day. Let's talk about Rashee Rice first. Another rookie out of Ole Miss, I believe, so same thing as A.J. Brown. Maybe that's the new wide receiver but he's been, being real solid as like a flex option in fantasy so far this year, especially the last couple of weeks. Week 5, 4 receptions, 33 yards, and a touchdown. This guy's a big, tall wide receiver. He's not like one of these Jordan Addison looking type of wide receivers. He's big and he's built. I'm sure Ole Miss has the weight room just in session at all times, and we can see that from those guys. Week 6, 4 receptions for 72 yards, so definitely still performing. Then week 7, 5 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. His most fantasy points that he's put up over the year so far with 17. I really do like this guy at your flex position. It seems like he actually has etched a spot in this offense. We were very concerned with Marquez Valdes-Scantling just because This was a guy in like preseason. He was like taking breaks because it seemed like he was gonna be making contributions. He was over there with Travis Kelce taking breaks during the preseason, and I just assumed he was going to be the wide receiver one. It turns out it is going to be most likely Rashee Rice here. Big, strong, and fast. So I definitely want to classify him as a winner and someone that I'm not afraid to play in fantasy at all. And then the question mark here, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, projected at 5 fantasy points, and I guess he caught a deep ball is what happened. He also had his most targets that he's had so far this year with 5. He had 3 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. He's getting a little bit older into his older age, as we say that. I think he's probably like 30-something, maybe like 29, and he's still a burner. This man is still 4.4 speed at 6'4", big target. Aaron Rodgers loved this dude and got him the ball a ton. I'm just surprised that we haven't seen Patrick Mahomes look his way a little bit more. Last year he was a lot more involved too, so maybe they're just getting him warmed up or something. He still only had 3 catches in this game, so he has the deep play potential. Don't know if I love him in fantasy, but he is kind of a reach, a sleeper, someone that has the potential to be great, but just hasn't done that so far this year. But 3 catches is his most that he's had all season too, so that's not a great sign from Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but we'll classify him as a winner, 17 fantasy points himself. Then we got Joshua. If y'all don't know, this is Josh Downs, another rookie. A lot of these rookie wide receivers are making differences. Jordan Addison making differences. Josh Downs making differences. Puka Nacua. Is that it? Maybe. I just can't think of Zay Flowers, of course. Zay Flowers doing big things too. But this is Josh Downs. He's real solid. One of my favorite fantasy football guys, Matthew Berry, is constantly talking about Josh Downs and how much he likes his upside. I also like his upside a lot. I've talked about it multiple times on the show, but this is a guy that I just watched a lot in college. I just happened to be watching these North Carolina football games, and I would just see Josh Downs running all over the field. So as soon as he got onto the Colts and it was said that he was going to sit in that slot receiver, I think he beat out Isaiah McKenzie, who's a consummate professional, someone who's been very solid for multiple years in the league. He beats him out in his rookie year, and so far he's just been a PPR nightmare for sure. This week, 5 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. In all games that Gardner Minshew has been playing, he constantly is targeting him. He had 6 targets this week, 8 targets in the week before, and then 6 targets in week 5. Week 3, when Gardner Minshew played and Anthony Richardson, I think, went out with his concussion, Josh Downs had 12 targets. So he's definitely part of this offense now. It does go Pittman first, and then I think it just goes right to Josh Downs. Alec Pierce is no longer fantasy relevant. Mo Alley Cox or like any other tight ends, Kylan Granson, are not fantasy relevant. It's really Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, and I really do like what Josh Downs is showing us. Very quick, very speedy slot receiver. Their offensive coordinator is Shane Steichen, I think it is, and he is constantly bringing him in motion because he's a threat. The defense needs to know where he is at all times. Definitely a winner in week 7. And then I want to talk about Odell Beckham before we get into my losers. Odell Beckham, I think he could be pick-upable. A lot of these fantasy managers have kind of given up on Odell Beckham Jr. Let's not forget he is really that guy. Like, he is very good wide receiver still. If he's healthy and his knees are intact, he's liable to do a lot of big things for this Ravens team this week. 5 receptions for 49 yards, most targets we've seen. So maybe he's starting to get to like a healthy point. Definitely like rostering Odell Beckham at the moment. 7 targets in this game, and I just expect that to continue climbing. It seems like it's going to be Odell and Zay Flowers. Rashad Bateman will be out there as well, but as it pertains to talent, Odell is probably the most talented wide receiver on the Baltimore Ravens still. So that's got to hold some merit. Definitely like picking up Odell and maybe throwing him in your flex this week in week 8 because he's got the Arizona Cardinals, who have been known to guard nobody. So shout out Odell Beckham. Guys, when I come back, let's wrap it up with the wide receiver losers. Guys, make sure you come back tomorrow for the quarterback and running back winners and losers too. All right. Let's wrap this thing up with a little bit of negativity, guys. I'm sorry. GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Let's talk about Sky Moore. So the Chiefs are making moves, they made one move. They made one whole move, and they got Mecole Hardman back. And I truthfully think that this is just going to take Sky Moore out of the equation. They've kind of given Sky Moore his chance. Wide receiver out of Western Michigan, really, really good in college, and they had high hopes for him. So far this year, he has just been completely irrelevant in fantasy football. Since week four, 1.9 points in fantasy, then 3.1 points, 4.2 points, then 3.5 points. Just terrible. Absolutely someone who I would recommend that you just drop. I don't think he's relevant anymore. Going to classify him as a loser this week, obviously, because only 2 receptions for 15 yards. Seems like Tony is ahead of him. And, Kadarius Toney. Mecole Hardman obviously knows this offense is going to slot right in. Very dangerous, speedy receiver. Also, Mecole Hardman is only 25. It feels like he's been in the league for so long. But I guess he's only 25 years old. So, he's running right there with Sky Moore, probably faster than him too. Rashee Rice is going to be ahead of him for sure, as he's probably the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. And then Marquez Valdes-Scantling plays most of the snaps for these Chiefs as well. So I just don't really see how Sky Moore fits in to this wide receiver room. I think he'll, forever just be like a 2 catches a game type of guy. However, I guess we did just hear Justin Ross got arrested for a felony charge, so that removes one guy, but it seemed like Justin Ross already was pretty irrelevant in this offense already. So Sky Moore, I think he's just going to be losing his job, especially with Mecole Hardman coming to town. Got to make sure we put on the losers. Attention to detail, guys. But yeah, Sky Moore, unplayable. Go ahead and drop Sky Moore for sure. This guy, he's pretty much a loser every single time that he hits the field now. It's really give and take with Calvin Ridley. He's very dangerous to start in fantasy football because he's liable to go for that 0 to 5 point performance, and I think he's done it multiple times already this year. He's sitting at wide receiver 37. A lot of people were drafting him with like their 4th and 5th round pick, thinking that he was going to be a top receiver. He showed those flashes. He showed that he still has the ability to do all those things. He's in his 6th year in the NFL, so he's used to this. He's used to the speed. He's still a very athletic receiver, and we like his upside on most days. He was going up against a really tough defensive backfield over there in New Orleans. Guys like Marshawn Lattimore, Tyrann Mathieu, definitely like all-pro type of talent over there in the defensive backfield. So I think we can maybe write off just this last game for Calvin Ridley. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who he and the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to play here in Week 8, have been giving up a lot of receiving yards, like a ton of receiving yards to these wide receiver number 1s. Usually it was Puka Nacua this week, and I was talking about earlier, I think last week when we were talking about the Pittsburgh defense, just like how much they're giving up to these wide receiver 1s. So Ridley, I'm saying to start him for this coming week, just one more time. That's it. And then he'll go into his bye, and then he can just go onto your bench from there. Christian Kirk has been really, really good, and he seemed to have gained favor with Trevor Lawrence in this offense. Really do like Calvin Ridley just from like an athletic perspective, and his crazy catch radius with not being that big of a guy. When he was on the Falcons, we saw him making crazy plays all throughout his career there. So I still do believe in this guy, but gonna slot him in as a loser with the 1 reception for 5 yards in this game. Only 4 targets. Terrible. This guy's a loser this week. Amari Cooper, not necessarily his fault. We did see, as Deshaun Watson started the game, he was not able to continue throughout the game, so they had to put in P.J. Walker, and Amari Cooper is just naturally going to hurt when his talented quarterback is out. He's sitting at wide receiver 43 going into Week 8 here in fantasy football. Only had 2 receptions for 22 yards, but the volume and the targets are definitely there. There hasn't been a game that he hasn't had 8+ targets, or there's only been one game where he's had under 8 targets, and he had 6 targets versus Baltimore. And this week, 8 targets, but only 2 receptions. Obviously, that's going to speak to the quarterback play a lot. And just the fact that he doesn't have a very talented dude in P.J. Walker. He's just not, the guy that we're looking for. So Amari Cooper's stock right now is definitely down, telling you to kind of stay away from him or be someone to look to trade. Currently, just as we don't know the future of Deshaun Watson. He is very valuable, though. Like I said, his volume is there. They want to get this guy the ball all the time. 8 targets pretty much every single game. So loving it from Amari Cooper, usually, just not here in Week 7. Then let's go with Christian Watson. He had a pretty bad day as well. Definitely not that good of a day. And a lot of that is due to the fact that Patrick Surtain was guarding him. He's pretty much locked up every wide receiver one that has played the Denver Broncos. He's really the lone bright spot on the Denver Broncos. Nobody else is worth noting on their offense or defense, in my opinion. But this week, only 3 receptions for 27 yards. I'm also not a believer at all in Jordan Love right now. Think that he is way overhyped, like way overhyped. A lot of his teammates at the beginning of the year were calling him the best quarterback in the NFL, and he's shown that he can't make basic throws. He has a very bad completion percentage. It's like 57 or something like that, maybe a little higher. But he just hasn't showed me anything. He actually should have thrown a pick. He threw a touchdown to Romeo Doubs or something like that. I think it was Romeo Doubs in the corner of the end zone. Pat Surtain was actually right there, and apparently the tie, like when 2 people catch the ball, the tie just always goes to the offense. So that was definitely interesting. Probably should have threw a pick that time. And Pat Surtain is just pretty much going to lock up any wide receiver one. So if your guy is playing against Denver, your wide receiver one, just watch out for Pat. We got 2 more guys here. Let's talk Keenan Allen. I think that's just a mouthpiece. I don't think that's a grill. So he's got the gold mouthpiece, definitely styling. Keenan Allen has been really solid so far this year. Definitely someone that is a must start every single time that he steps onto the field. I was kind of the mindset that he was not going to have as good of a year this year, and he's completely shut that down. He's had a couple down weeks where he only scores like 10 fantasy points, but I think that's really his floor. That was one of these weeks this week, going up against a really solid corner in Trent McDuffie over there on the Chiefs. Really do like him, second-year cornerback out of Washington, I think, and only had 4 receptions for 55 yards. He's still getting the volume. Justin Herbert absolutely does want to get this guy the ball all the time, and he's shown that so far this year. He had the 9 targets here in Week 7 too, so they were definitely trying. Just went 4 for 9 on trying to get him the ball. Definitely still believe in this guy. He's a guy that got 20 targets in a game this year, already put up 200 yards in a game this year. He looks fine. I'm sure he just got kind of game planned by this Chiefs defense and Steve Spagnuolo. But he's going to get to play the Chicago Bears here in Week 8, so absolutely telling you to start Keenan Allen in Week 8. Then we got to talk Cooper Kupp, like on PFF and all those websites, he was like the top-ranked guy to go crazy in Week 7. Going up against this Pittsburgh defense, who I was literally just talking about as being one of the worst against very talented wide receivers, and in this game he only puts up 2 receptions for 29 yards. Definitely disappointing. Once again, another guy who his quarterback always is going to be looking at him constantly. Still had 7 targets in this game, only ended up with 7 total fantasy points in this game too. We've already seen him do big things so far this year, so I think this is just one of his duds. This happens to athletes, any given day. But Week 5, we saw him go crazy. 8 receptions, 118 yards. Week 6, 7 receptions, 148 yards. And then against a terrible coverage defense, he has 2 receptions for 29 yards. I think it's a dud. They're going to be playing Dallas this next week, and I'm sure he's going to get his healthy volume of targets. They're always looking for Cooper Kupp over there, and I really like Matt Stafford and how he's looked so far this year. He's looking even a little bit more mobile, so I trust the quarterback play. They got to worry about Puka Nacua over there, and think Cooper Kupp is going to be just fine. Still have him ranked as one of my top 3 receivers in fantasy right now. Guys, that is going to wrap it up. I appreciate y'all for being here, and make sure you come back tomorrow for quarterbacks and running backs winners and losers. But yeah, anytime you guys have a question or anything, I'm always happy to answer questions, all that stuff. Make sure you check out the Patreon. If you want to drop a tip, do that. And I appreciate y'all. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.